Your brain may be saying, I'm nervous about a low. Your body may be saying, I'm nervous to be standing in front of this room in front of potentially hundreds of people. And that could cause an adrenaline spike, which means your liver is going to say fight or flight. Boom, here's a bunch of glucose, and your number is going to go up and up and up and up. And that is also extremely normal. It is very normal because you're excited. It's nervous excited, but you're excited. You know, maybe it's your friend's special day. You want to make sure you're there for them, but you're still the one standing there and maybe you're a little bit unnerved. So that can make your number rise as well. So what do you do in a case like that? You can correct. I wouldn't overdo it. I would still have the glucose on your purse. I would still try to minimize active insulin going in. But if you go into this event and you're 160 and suddenly you're looking like, oh snap, I'm 225 with an up arrow, you may want to correct, but at the same time, you're going to also not want to overdo it because then when the event is done, remember, the adrenaline wears off and boom, down goes the blood sugar. You start to feel a lot better. So you also don't want to then completely crash, especially if it's something that's like a wedding where there could be dancing, there could be movement, etc. Welcome to the Your Diabetes Insider podcast, where we take all of the mysteries of blood sugar control, focusing on nutrition, exercise, and any of the other 40 plus factors that may impact your blood sugar. If you don't know me, my name is Ben Zeal. I'm a registered dietitian, certified diabetes educator, strength and conditioning coach, and I've lived myself with type 1 diabetes for over 20 years. And I am here to share everything that I have learned in both my personal and professional experience so you can live that incredible diabetes life. So get ready and let's dive right into today's episode. What is going on? Welcome to this episode of the Your Diabetes Insider podcast. And today I want to talk about a scenario that I don't think we've ever talked about on here, but it's something that can be very real, can happen, and I want to make sure you're prepared for it, or at the very least, you've thought about it, right? You always hear about people, oh, well, what if there was a zombie apocalypse? What would I do with my insulin? Well, you know, that's a fun thought experiment, but this one has hopefully a higher likelihood of happening versus a zombie apocalypse. I don't even want to go down that rabbit hole, but needless to say, this would be life events and what to do with your blood sugar. And so examples could be graduations, weddings, funerals, things that you are there. Your goal is to be present. Your goal is to be as present as possible. And your goal is to enjoy them. And a lot of times, imagine this situation, right? You're standing in your friend's wedding, best friend's wedding. You're super excited for them. You're the, best man or you're the maid of honor. And suddenly you hear your Dexcom going off. That's probably not the situation you want to have happening. And so what a lot of people default to as people with diabetes is they'll say, well, I'm going to go to this event. I don't want beeps sometime during the event. So as a result, I'm going to run my blood sugar higher and I'm going to suffer a little bit while I'm there. And I don't feel like this is an absolute ordained, this must be like this. There is a way to have your cake and eat it too, where you have great numbers and you're enjoying the event and you're still totally present. Because if my number's high, and I'm sure you may have a different situation, whether you're type 1 or type 2, when your number is higher, it is harder to concentrate. It is harder to be present. It is harder to use your brain and soak in everything that is going on in a certain situation. And what you don't want is to think about your best friend's wedding where the entire time, all you can have in the back of your brain is, what if my number's low? What if my number's low? What if my number's low? Because your number's great the whole time. And you also don't want, I know I'm not going to go low, but I feel like trash because of what's going on with my number because I ran my number up to 255. So here are some things to think about to make sure you can enjoy events like this to the max extent. And again, for wedding, you can substitute a number of different things. You can substitute graduation. You can substitute, specific family events. You can substitute, hey, someone in my family has this big old talk that they're giving that I have to be there, or an award ceremony, or, religious stuff, whatever it is. You get the general gist. And so the thoughts here, how to set yourself up for success in these situations. And I started thinking about this. So I was at a wedding recently and I was thinking, I'm like, I'm not in this wedding. I'm in the crowd. I can do what I need to do. But imagine I was up there and my numbers, not doing great. It's a little bit, higher than I want, or it's trending. So what would have to happen in order to ensure that this can be as successful as possible? So the first thing I would do is, again, I always talk about planning and preparation on this show. And I think it's very pertinent because diabetes is predominantly planning and preparation. So the first thing I'm thinking is, okay, how can I ensure that my active insulin is not crazy prior to this event? Very similar to how you would observe it for exercise, right? You don't want to be running. You don't want to be going into a run with 3 units of active insulin because you're probably going to plummet. In a similar vein, if you're going to be standing in a wedding, or you might be an usher, right? You might be having some sort of role. You probably don't want to be showing up with a ton of active insulin in your system. And these things can be short, right? A graduation ceremony could be longer simply because you're waiting for everyone's name to be called. A wedding could be a whole 30 or 40 minutes, but some of these events can be a very long occurrence. Some of the religious ones in particular can be hours and hours. And the last thing you want is to have to leave the room for any particular reason. You feel like everybody's eyes are watching you, when the reality is most of the time it's not. It's called the spotlight effect, where you think everyone's watching you, but everybody's kind of in their own little world. I digress. With this though, you can reduce the active insulin going in a perfect world, meaning you've had some sort of meal or snack a couple hours in advance. And preferably in that case, again, protein's going to help with stabilization. Probably don't want to go out and have a giant pancake breakfast and a ton of carbs are going to hit you really quickly 2 hours, 3 hours, 4 hours before this event, right? If you can help it, if it's a last second thing, different story. But if you can help it, I wouldn't go have some adventurous new crazy food right beforehand. If you want to be present, you want to be in range, you want to look for something, hey, I know that what this is going to do, or I have a rough idea of what I'm going to do for dosing for it. I'm going to want something with some protein in it, and want something with a little bit of fat in it, keep my numbers steady, and then make sure that I can have as little active insulin going into this event as possible. Because think about it. Let's say you're standing in this wedding and you're 165 and you're on insulin, right? In this particular example. Well, you could still give a tiny little correction and say, hey, okay, I'm going to be good for the next, hour and a half, whatever it might be. And I'm good. But on the flip side, what you don't want to do is, oh, I'm 160. Let me take a ton of insulin. Boom. Or, oh, I still have 5 units left over from breakfast. Probably not going to be the ideal type of situation here. So the other thing too is, again, if these events do happen, if you're at a graduation, if you're the one graduating, I mean, heck, I can go into my story on that in a second, but if you're the one graduating, or if you're the one who's thinking, well, I'm standing in this wedding, what do I need to do? Do I need to, step away? If you need to treat, you need to treat. Like what I would do if you're standing in an event, you're standing up in front of everybody else, I would have something glucose related on your person. Can be super small, can be super discreet, so you can quickly, turn around, toss, you're good. That would be the easiest type of situation. And in a case like this, right, you're thinking, okay, well, could it be juice? It could be juice if that's easy. If there's a place to, put it discreetly, that could be super helpful for you. If you're like, hey, I really want to make it not a big deal, and you can kind of turn, pop something in your mouth, quickly chew it, you're good. But just something, right? And having little active insulin is going to help prevent the low, because most people are more concerned about the low blood sugar in this situation than they are about the high blood sugar. Again, you don't want to have that happen, but you need to be able to dose. It could be a situation too where maybe somebody in the audience, someone, it's your significant other, a family member, someone can say, hey, I'm going to monitor your number. If you're running a tad bit higher, I'm going to dose you a tiny bit for you. So that way you don't have to worry about it. Or you've got your ability to dose on your person. You turn around for a half second, boom, dose, you're good. So having these things in your mind ahead of time are going to help. Now, what I will also say, if you're standing in front of a room, you may not have to worry as much about a low. Your brain may be saying, I'm nervous about a low. Your body may be saying, I'm nervous to be standing in front of this room in front of potentially hundreds of people. And that could cause an adrenaline spike, which means your liver is going to say fight or flight. Boom, here's a bunch of glucose, and your number is going to go up and up and up and up. And that is also extremely normal. It is very normal because you're excited. It's nervous excited, but you're excited. Maybe it's your friend's special day. You want to make sure you're there for them, but you're still the one standing there, and maybe you're a little bit unnerved. So that can make your number rise as well. So what do you do in a case like that? You can correct. I wouldn't overdo it. I would still have the glucose on your person. I would still try to minimize active insulin going in. But if you go into this event and you're 160 and suddenly you're looking like, oh snap, I'm 225 with an up arrow, you may want to correct, but at the same time, you're going to also not want to overdo it, because then when the event is done, remember, the adrenaline wears off and boom, down goes the blood sugar. You start to feel a lot better. So you also don't want to then completely crash, especially if it's something that's like a wedding where there could be dancing, there could be movement, etc. But the biggest examples here that I can give, there's a few of them I've got. Number one would be my own wedding. And that one was certainly interesting because it was small, but of course it's a big deal. It's ideally, fingers are crossed, knocking on all the wood, but it's ideally the one time in your life that you get married. And so the goal is with that, you want to be on point as good as possible. My numbers going in, I'm not going to lie, were a tiny bit high. Why were they high? I'm also not going to lie, because my cousin in his infinite wisdom brought all of the dudes at the wedding who were all taking the pictures and stuff. a giant box of baklava from a local bakery because we got married in Greece because we were like, it'll be fun and it'll be small and it'll be way more economical. Oh, fun fact. Anyways, that being said, I did have some baklava before the wedding. I did go a little bit higher. I wasn't crazy high. I was probably like 170, but it was definitely not ideal. Now, I wasn't looking at my pump. I was, hey, I'm here. This is good. I did have my pump on my person. They actually made it so for my suit, I had a spot where I could put my pump, which was nice. So it wasn't going to interfere, look bulky or weird or anything. But in that particular situation, I was able to say, cool, I'm good. I'm walking into this. I'm fine. Of course, during the wedding, slightly nervous, but the wedding then ended. It was pretty quick. I want to say it was like 30 minutes max. And then at that point, okay, the adrenaline all came down. My number drifted and everything was good from that point forward. And then ironically, with the wedding, I believe it was at the reception, my Dexcom just straight up stopped working, which was super fun, but that was at the reception. So it was different. But the wedding that I was just at, right? Obviously, that was something where I was in the audience. It was not a big deal. My graduation that I mentioned before, the one I can remember in particular was ironically not high school, but college, where college, I had just gotten a CGM. That's how I'm a dinosaur, right? I'm UNC status, as the children would say these days. But at that college graduation for undergrad, just gotten a CGM like 2 months before, definitely still had to wear a receiver. Everything was super, super new to me and it was super helpful. But that was where I saw the prime example of the nerves, because everything was fine until they call up my row to go up and I start, walking with my row. They're going to say my name and everything else. And it's super cool. But the bigger thing there was there's no escaping that situation, right? You're dealing with it. You're only having your, 20 seconds of glory, if that. So it wasn't as big of a deal, but you still have a little bit of nerves and excitement for, hey, you're going up on the stage. It's your moment. It's your time to shine for a second. So with that, I did notice a little bump from adrenaline, which then came right back down after the fact. So again, you're probably going to experience that if you are part of the event. But on the flip side, if you're someone who's, hey, I'm an usher at the event, watch your number in case you are running back and forth with people as you're helping seat them. So in those situations as well, like for the wedding, for me, that morning, I tried to keep a lot of stuff very similar, right? I did my normal workout, invited some of the, I would call them groomsmen, but we had such a small wedding that there really weren't groomsmen or bridesmaids because we would have had no one in the audience. So, had some of the dudes go and lift with me. After that, got some food that I knew how it was going to respond with my number. It was some, souvlaki chicken, which is one of my faves of all time anyway, but had that. Also, timing wise, had that around 12:30. The wedding was starting, I believe, at 4. It was at 3:30 or 4. So there was plenty of time for that active insulin to do its thing. Had the baklava probably about 2:15 after the pictures were done. So in a case like that, right, most of the active insulin out of my system at that point. So again, looking at the process, minimizing the active insulin is going to be a big deal. Having something low for low snacks on your person will absolutely help you. It will help you a lot more than you realize. It will give you a lot of peace of mind, knowing that there will probably be an adrenaline spike, another thing that's going to be a very big deal for you. And the other thing about it is just enjoy it, right? Because at the end of the day, most of these things are like one-time events that are meant to be enjoyed. They're meant to be fun. So don't stress in that situation. It's easier said than done, right? But just trust, hey, did I do everything correctly from a diabetes standpoint that I know I can do? Yes, I did. Okay, awesome. And do I have my preparation in case something goes awry, i.e. my number goes up? Do I have someone that can dose for me, or can I dose myself very discreetly? And number 2, do I have stuff for low snacks just in case? And if you have that, you should be fine. Because a lot of these events, like I said, they're not super long. The ones that are long, your portion of them may not be a very big thing. For example, like I said, right, graduation, you have your time on the stage, but you're not the main event for the entire graduation. If you were the one giving the commencement speech, cool, maybe you've got, 10 minutes or so or 15 minutes, but even then your adrenaline goes up, it comes right back down. So you're going to be totally fine in that kind of situation. But let me know if you've got these kind of events coming up in your life. Definitely let me know what your big takeaways from this are. Always want to dive into the things, just the nitty gritty of diabetes that people just don't think about very often. So I hope this was helpful. If you're loving the podcast, give us a great review, 5-star on Apple, Spotify, wherever you are listening. It would mean the world to me. And if you're someone who's, hey, I need better blood sugars, I really want to have the best numbers of my life prior to the end of 2025, my team and I are here to help support you. We are all dietitians. We all have exercise backgrounds. We've all got a very intimate connection to the Beatus, and we understand you. So reach out on social @Man of Zeal. MANOFTZEEL. Let me know how we can best support you, and I'll catch you in the next episode.
Hope you're ready for the next episode. Hey.